wall is the catchphrase that Donald Trump introduced to the world recently, and it seems to have really caught on here in Cork City with recent plans for flood relief in Cork City, where they're planning on building a wall around all of the city, 8.7 kilometres to be specific. Now, if you're on Facebook, you may have noticed a group that has come up. It's called Love the Lee or SaveCorkCity.org, where they have been where they've been publicising what sorts of effects that this is going to have on the city. Joining me this evening is John Hagerty.
Hi, Fiona.
Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks.
Now, tell me about your own background, John. You are a conservation architect.
Well, I'm an architect, and I'm from Cork, and I live in the centre of Cork. And
but you have a specific interest in conservation?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I work in conservation.
And you are the main person that's involved in Save Cork City and say Love the Lee?
No, there's a group of us. We started.
But you're the main person?
Well, there's a few. There's a group, and we started back in January. We found out about the proposals for flood relief in the city centre. So
the point that I want to make is that everyone that's in this group are all engineers.
We have engineers, architects, we have a lot of academics in the group from UCC. We have hydrologists, we have climate change experts, and so there's a lot of people feeding into the group, you know.
From all sorts of intelligent backgrounds.
Well, I suppose, yeah, if you like, mostly intelligent.
Mostly, depending on the day. But I suppose the main point is that, you know, like, obviously Cork City and the rest of Ireland has been affected recently, but specifically Cork has been affected by flooding in the last number of years, and we obviously need a flood relief plan.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah.
So the OPW came along recently.
So, well, the OPW,
Office of Public Works.
Office of Public Works, are proposing a plan for the centre of Cork that would involve building walls around the city centre area, which would stretch from above, say, where this county hall is, down to the current customs house. And that would involve removing almost all of the current quay walls down to the ground, and then rebuilding them in different versions of concrete or earth mounds. So, for instance, up in Fitzgerald Park, you'd have earth mounds all the way along the bank of the river, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to see the water anymore, or the trees that are there would have to be removed first before the embankment was constructed in the city.
So you're talking about the removal of historic quay walls and beautiful old trees in the likes of Fitzgerald Park.
Yeah, and railings in the city centre. We have some extraordinary railings that are comparable to Venice, particularly running down Sullivan's Quay. Extraordinary railings in the North Mall. They were cast over 3 different occasions in Victorian times. And of course we have the rubble quay walls, which are up by St. Finbarr's, which could go, parts of which will go back to the 16th and 17th century. So we have a very significant group of different types of structures around the city that are related to the river, and there are all of the access points as well, incredible stone steps going down to the river in many different locations.
As an architect yourself, and other engineers who are watching, like people who would want to go ahead and develop the city or do something with the city, the amount of obstacles that you would face if you had to try and, remove a quay wall or destroy a historical wall or a bridge like that.
Yeah.
And for some reason, this crowd think that they can come along and knock it all down and build up new walls. How is that possible?
Well, I suppose it is difficult for us to understand why this is being proposed, because it's a finite solution. It's not a solution that's recommended by experts in flood relief, throughout Europe. It's really an old-fashioned solution whereby you try to create walls to contain water, but it usually moves the problem somewhere else.
But it's not like, I don't understand how building a wall could possibly keep the water from coming onto the streets.
It's
They
quite
still seep through, like.
Well, the unusual thing is that what they want to try and do is excavate behind the walls to the depth of the walls and fill it with concrete all the way around the city. So you're talking about 8.7 kilometres of of concrete, basically, so that water can't seep into the city. This is what is proposed. I mean, we're not even sure if it would work. You're talking about something that it could take up to 10 years to even complete, and until the very last day that it's complete, there would be no flood relief. And of course, we would be much more in danger of flooding during construction, because the current defences that are there would have to come down.
And of course, you're also talking about, we were talking earlier about like the actual construction around that, around these walls, is going to probably cause an awful lot of traffic jams.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the Lewis works, but there'd be nothing beneficial in the end. The construction works are enormous. You're talking about 22 pump chambers in the city centre alone. So on the quays, all the way down around all of our winding quays in Cork, there have to be these very, very large holes dug. They have to be sheet piled, and then they will have pumps put in them. Recently, actually,
how big would these pumps be?
4 metres by 8 metres deep is the smallest one, but then if they can't go that deep, and they probably won't be able to, they would be much bigger. So about the size of a double-decker bus. Imagine trying to bury a double-decker bus 22 times in the city centre.
So you're talking about 22 big holes along the river, the size of double-decker buses.
That's right. In fact, there's 46 of them proposed to keep the city dry. And recently in New Orleans, they flooded because their pump chambers that they had installed after their last catastrophic flood event didn't kick in. So the difference here is that the OPW were proposing that Cork would no longer passively drain itself. We would be relying on pumps, and we'd be relying on walls to keep us from flooding from the river, and there would be higher water levels in the river. So for the first time in history ever, Cork people would be in the city centre, and they would be under the level of water that would be in the river. So that's a potentially catastrophic precedent.
Just the logistics about these pumps, right? They're pumping the water out of the river. Where does the water go when they pump?
You need pumps, because if you seal all of the quays, even the rainwater that is produced in the city centre then would get stuck in the city centre and fill up like a bowl. So we would be vulnerable to that happening to us. So even you get flood events when there's rain. So we're vulnerable to the rain that could flood us as well, because we would become a sealed bowl. So they're talking about one-way valves and things like that. But I mean, it's almost like trying to stop time. The water comes up through the pipes, in many cases, drainage pipes, sewage pipes and things like that. So we wonder that even if this, what we consider to be a very ill-conceived scheme went ahead, would it ever work? Yeah.
So basically what we're talking about here is, if the OPW get their way as is with the current plans that are in place, we're talking about trees being knocked down, banks being put up, the river that goes the whole way around the city, 8.7 kilometres of walls being built up, so you won't be able to see the walls, you won't be able to see the river at all. Right, let's talk about your solution.
Well, our solution is...
this is the better idea proposed by all of the engineers and architects.
And climate change specialists. And we have the support of Netherlands Water, which is the national water authority in the Netherlands. We have our recent report from HR Wallingford.
A whole country who lives under the water.
A whole country that lives under the water. Basically, They do know about this stuff.
Yes.
And I mean, what they say basically is, you don't build a very, very long wall to keep out water, because that will increase your costs, and that will also dramatically increase the possibility that the wall will fail. So if you build a very long wall to protect your town, it isn't that it might fail, it will fail at some stage, and if you can build a shorter defence, you have much more control over it. So we're proposing a tidal barrier, which would be on the other side of Lough Mahon, between Little Island and Horsehead, which is just before Passage. And it's shallow water, and yet it's in a location that doesn't interrupt traffic on the river and allows for developed amenities. It would protect a huge amount more of the city. It would protect the new docks developments. It would protect vital infrastructure. If you needed to get very fast from one part of the city down to the east up to, say, the CUH or something like that, you'd be able to do it. So it has huge, huge advantages to have a tidal barrier. Now, the OPW said to us that wasn't feasible because it would be too expensive. So we had to get it costed. and we had to go to one of the most reputable firms in the world in terms of tidal barriers. We went to HR Wallingford. They've costed it at 140 million euros, which is comparable to the walls, but in fact it protects a lot more of the city.
Yeah. And you went on your own, like off your own back, you went and got this report.
We've done a lot of things. We've had symposia in the university. We've brought people in. We're constantly educating ourselves on this issue. We've made our own proposal to have the quay walls restored, as well as looking at the upstream catchment management.
I just don't understand, like the caliber of the people in this group. Like, why are they not just saying, that's a brilliant idea, thanks a million, let's go with that. All the architects and the engineers and the climate change experts who have anything to do with Cork think this is a better idea, let's just go for it.
Well, it could be partly because of just entrenchment in human nature, but I think really there are solutions being proposed for flood relief all over the country that people might now be beginning to question, because they're not the solutions that are promoted by, say, the EU flood directive. They're not the solutions that are always sure to work, because floodwaters move around, and people are beginning to talk about managing floodwaters and slowing the flow of rivers now, and protecting cities in different ways than just building walls, because it's almost like building on floodplains. You're building walls and the water's going to go somewhere else anyway.
Yeah, brilliant. John, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, thanks.
Thanks for explaining all of that to us, because I just feel that it is a cause that is so important, because if we do nothing about this, we're just going to end up with walls all around the city.
It would be very bad for the city. Particularly what we're interested in is the economics of the city. The city centre, people who businesses and traders, they're the ones that are going to be affected badly by this, because construction work of that magnitude over 10 years would really end the possibilities for some businesses to survive. We've had the main drainage, people didn't survive that, and it was very unfortunate. So we really need to do something about this.
So what can we do? What can people do now? Anyone watching this, what's the first thing to do?
Talk to your TD. If you want to, you can go into town and go to the Rocket Man and get one of these discs, have your photo taken and send it to us, and your support will be recognised on Facebook. Our Facebook page is safecorkcity.org, and any support we can get there also would be fantastic. And you can read about all of the proposals. You can also look at the photos of the proposals that are on our Facebook page as well, if you really want to see how alarming this is.
Like it on Facebook. Yeah,
that's great.
John, thanks a million for coming in, and thanks for sharing.
Listen, thanks very much, Fiona.
Lovely
Thanks a million.
Meeting you, John.
No
Over to you, Adele.